Hola amigos, somos familia. We are family. Welcome to the Tortilla Diaries. I'm your host, Dr. Rebecca Dominguez-Karimi. And thanks for joining me this month as we celebrate La Familia Mexicana, or Mexican-American families. Each month, our program will feature a variety of topics. One month, I may feature life stories taken from my Treasures from Aztlan oral history project, or I might do some interviews from Latinos in different professions. Another month, I might highlight Afro-Latino artists or indigenous artists performing their music, reading their poetry or short stories. Our goal remains to break down the barriers that exist between cultures and create a better understanding between peoples. Please join me in celebrating this rich and diverse culture. And remember, somos familia. You're listening to the Tortilla Diaries, a monthly production of Treasures from Aztlan, written and produced by Dr. Rebecca Dominguez-Karimi. I know by now you're probably wondering about my credentials. Allow me a moment to give you a brief bio. I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, and now live in North Florida. I have a PhD in Comparative Studies and a certificate in Gender Studies from Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton. I became an oral historian, writer, radio producer, and part-time professor. Recently, the Florida Humanities Council selected me for inclusion in their speakers directory, and my programs highlight the Mexican-American experience. My passion for gathering oral histories from minority communities led to the creation of my own oral history project, Treasures from Aztlan. This collection contains over 20 voices from the Mexican-American community. Narrators' ages range from 30 to a very young 90. Women and men are equally represented, and the stories they tell are fascinating. Events range from the Mexican Revolution to the Great Depression to World War II and beyond. Some stories are funny, while others are sad, and others will make you shout for joy, which leads me to this month's story. I'm an American. First of all, has anyone ever asked you, where were you born? Where did you come from? For many minorities, this question relates to United States citizenship and the rights and privileges associated with it. Our story, I'm an American, highlights one young woman's journey as she navigates the challenges of racism in the 1940s. I'd like to preface my remarks by acknowledging the work accomplished by the Black Lives Matter movement against all odds, police brutality, a pandemic, and political pressure. The group continues their activism to bring to light the unequal, unjust, and deadly treatment Black lives have endured for so long. It's time for societal change, for people to raise their voices together in unison and in support of Black Lives Matter. Our narrator, Minerva Mendoza, was born in San Antonio, Texas in 1925. The daughter of Mexican refugees, her parents sought shelter in the United States in 1914 due to the Mexican Revolution. They were married just hours before a train brought them to the U.S. and to a new life. Minerva and her 6 sisters and 2 brothers were all born in the United States. However, racially restricted housing covenants confined her family and other Mexican families to the boundaries of the Mexican barrio. Minerva was surrounded by the culture, the people, and the language. She spoke Spanish at home, in school, and at church, but she didn't consider Spanish as a handicap. Instead, she considered her bilingualism an asset rather than a detriment. And now for our story. As bullets and cries calling for revolt clamored throughout the countryside, the Mexican Revolution of 1910 disrupted the lives of countless people who suddenly found themselves caught in the middle of this rebellion. While revolutionaries Villa, Carranza, and Zapata fanned the flames of insurgency, they impacted more than just a political system and forced multitudes to seek refuge in the United States. Similar to present-day circumstances, these refugees sought shelter from the ravages of war. The hostilities that endangered their lives transported thousands to Mexican barrios across the United States, where they pursued a new life. Our narrator, Minerva Mendoza, recounts the story of how her grandparents left the Mexican homeland and changed societies, political systems, and languages as they shed the old for the new.
On November the 14th, my grandfather brought all his family because of the war, and there were so many. The war was getting real bad, and they were killing so many men. And my grandfather had all boys. Then my dad wasn't married yet, so he married my mother at 3 o'clock in the morning because he couldn't come. He didn't want to leave his girlfriend there. He wanted to bring her to San Antonio. So he brought her and her mother.
Initially, Mendoza's grandfather and his 11 sons worked hard as tenant farmers, saving all their earnings to buy a small plot of land. Eventually, these purchases grew, and before long, he amassed over 650 acres of farm and ranch land. As the family patriarch, her grandfather knew the power that literacy bestowed on an individual and instilled its importance in his children and grandchildren. In his wisdom, he insisted that his family attain the highest education possible. As we will discover, Minerva Mendoza never forgot her grandfather's teachings. Born in the barrio in the late 1920s, Mendoza grew up in the color-conscious town of San Antonio, Texas. She began elementary school knowing only her native language of Spanish, but quickly learned English thanks to her parents.
We knew English and Spanish because my mother taught us Spanish. My dad taught us English because we had to be prepared for school. We had to know English first. And sometimes we had problems reading and understanding what we were reading, so we always had to have the dictionary next to us to understand and answer anything that we didn't know. And my mother was very good to us. She prepared us in the way that she could. She would buy dictionaries for us, and she would make sure that we would always sit down and do our homework. So they were very important. They were really wanted us to learn and to go to school and to be like the other kids, to fit in. So I think we were not intimidated. We felt very relaxed because we could speak English, and anything we didn't know, well, we had books to learn to be able to answer what we needed to know it in school. So it was a little harder for us because we had to study a little bit more and read a little bit more to understand. But after that, I don't think we didn't have a very hard time.
Historians note how Mexican Americans endured every form of discrimination, similar to African Americans, making them part of the rigid caste system. Historical records and oral histories verify they were either segregated into separate classes from Anglo students, railroaded into vocational or technical programs, or worse yet, placed in separate, substandard facilities called Mexican schools. These deplorable conditions demoralize them as a group, as statistics reveal that on the average, Mexican American citizens who matured before 1949 had only completed 3 years of school. Clearly, this lack of education severely hindered their life chances. Chicano scholars believe the farmers and ranchers strove to keep their Mexican field workers illiterate and ignorant. But I think good old-fashioned systemic racism kept a tight noose around all Mexicans, citizens or not, as Anglo society attempted to contain them to the lowest socioeconomic class. The year was 1938. And Mendoza vividly remembers being called Mexican by her peers. To make matters worse, she received racist treatment from all sides of the educational system. Many of her teachers didn't like Mexicans, and she was not allowed to join Pep Squad because of her heritage. At age 80, these traumatic experiences of racism have seared themselves into her long-term memory. As fresh as the day she experienced them.
Well, we knew that a lot of the school kids didn't like Hispanics or Mexicans, how they used to call us then. But I really didn't have much a problem with those students because they were all nice and friendly. The problem was the teachers, because some didn't allow the Hispanics to join like I went to Breckenridge High School, the Hispanics couldn't join the Purple Jackets because that teacher didn't like the Mexicans. So we didn't even bother because we knew we wouldn't be able to join the club. And there were a lot of teachers. There was a Spanish teacher that I enjoyed Spanish because I knew Spanish. My mother taught us Spanish. She taught us how to read and how to write. And my father knew English, so we learned English from him. And then there was our Spanish teacher. She didn't really care to teach us anything in Spanish because she was more interested in talking to the rich students and finding out about their lives and really not teaching us anything. And but I don't remember ever having any problems with them saying things against me or it was just I get something natural that they always hung around with the Anglos and we hung around with the Hispanics.
So then it was more of a segregation, but an unspoken segregation?
Yes, very unspoken because nobody ever did anything about it and they didn't say anything.
After the Mexican-American War of 1848, according to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, all Mexican citizens residing in land taken over by the United States were considered Caucasian and granted automatic American citizenship with all its rights and privileges, if they desired. But the treaty remained unheeded by many across the land. Many Anglos did not consider Mexican Americans like Mendoza as white, or even as Americans, although they were born in the United States. The systemic racism existing within social and political structures attempted to undermine the rights and self-esteem of minorities, discouraging and denying them the opportunities to develop critical thinking skills, thus thwarting their ability to fulfill their potential. Mendoza learned her civic lessons well, for she knew, as a U.S. citizen, she deserved equality.
The Anglos, and well, some of them, not all of them, but they felt, I guess they thought that they were better than everybody else, which they were not. Because I didn't feel like we didn't know anything or that we were ignorant. Maybe we didn't speak as good English, or we didn't have the opportunities that they had to go to college and go to those special schools to learn, besides their public school. But I never felt that that we didn't belong, or that we couldn't do what they did. We couldn't learn. They couldn't say, oh, they're nobody, because we felt we were. We were, because we were brought up, in my in a different culture. We weren't just Mexicans, where you could say, oh, they're Mexicans, they don't know anything, they're no good. Well, we knew we were good.
Self-esteem.
we knew, or so I felt that we always had a right just like anybody else, because we were all in school. We went to school to learn. We were equal.
Beginning high school in the early 1940s, Mendoza confronted the hegemony of racial bias head-on. In an act of bravado, Mendoza decided to attend an all-white college preparatory high school and encountered discrimination policies firsthand. School administrators tried to deny her admission, but like the biblical David who fought the mighty Goliath, Mendoza fought to attend Breckenridge High School and succeeded in becoming one of the first Mexican-American students to gain entry. She maintained a strong sense of identity as her voice of dissent triumphed over the racial barriers situated before her.
I remember one problem in high school. When we graduated from Harris Junior High, I always thought I would be going to Breckenridge because it was closer to my house. And then they used to put our schedule on the bulletin board. So mine said I had to go to Burbank. And then I was trying to get my friend, because we were very close, and she said, I'm going to Burbank. I said, let's go to Breckenridge. It's closer for us. Why go to Burbank? And so I talked her into going with me to Breckenridge. So we went to the dean's office, and they I told them I can't go to Burbank. They have me on schedule that I need to go. That's where I'm supposed to go. I said, but I'm not going to Burbank. It's too far from me. Breckenridge is closer to me. And the principal, it was a woman. I think she didn't like the Hispanics. And I remember she didn't tell me, because we were Hispanics, that we couldn't go. But she did insist that we couldn't go. And I said, why can't I go? Why can't I come here? I graduated from Harris. Call the school and find out for sure. And she just kept stalling, or she didn't know what else to tell me. And I said, well, I'm not going over there to Burbank. And then I said, well, let me talk to somebody else here. that if you're not sure that we graduated from Chandler Harris, well then call over there and find out and tell me why we can't come to Breckenridge. And she insisted, and I was very stubborn. I said, I'm not going to Burbank. I said, I'm going to come to Breckenridge because Burbank is too far. So finally, I don't know who she talked to, but then she said, okay, you can come to Breckenridge. And then I think back, and maybe because I was Hispanic, but she never said anything.
Colonized societies throughout the world demonstrate similar oppressive conditions. Oppressive governments try to prevent minority students from gaining an education that stimulates the critical faculties so they may learn how to use their creative powers to transform the world around them. In this way, oppressive systems confine minority individuals to subservient roles, limiting life chances.
And I think that's one thing that I'm glad that I went and I talked. There was nobody else to talk for me, but I knew what to say or what to do. Because I felt, well, I have a right to learn and to go to any school I want. I'm an American. We're here to learn. We're here to learn, and it doesn't matter what color I am. I don't think, if you think I'm too dark or dark, I mean, what's the difference? I'm going to learn just like anybody else is. So I'm going to come to Breckenridge. I felt it's a public school. Anybody can come. We don't have to pay because the government pays. It's for everybody. So why should we be deprived to learn? That's what we're here for. We can learn. We're here to learn. My mother's not sending us here to play around or to see what color are you. And we were here to learn. No matter what color is sitting next to me, we're going to learn. And I just felt that I had to say everything I did because I had a right. I'm an American.
While Minerva Mendoza's traumatic experiences occurred during the Jim Crow era, unfortunately, racism in all its forms still exists, creeping into our everyday lives, limiting our opportunities, and even determining who lives and who dies. The activism demonstrated by the Black Lives Matter movement certainly proves this point. Racism hasn't disappeared, which leads me to my last story called I'm Mexican and American. This oral history comes from a young high school student in Palm Beach County, Florida, who relates her tale about how racism affects her life. This narrative was gathered by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Kitty Oliver, the founder of the Race and Change program series. She's given me permission to play it on my program, and I thank her for her graciousness. I think you'll enjoy hearing the perspective of the younger generation as they voice their dissent against racism.
This is Dr. Kitty Oliver, oral historian with Florida Atlantic University. The story you're about to hear is part of the series Voices of Race and Change, the Younger Generation.
I'm Vanessa Hernandez. I'm 14. I was born here in Florida, but my parents are both Mexican. I love being Mexican. I love the culture, the religion. It's just a big part of me, I guess you can say. But at home, it's normal. I love my family. We act like a big Mexican family. But at school, it's a different story. I have classmates since like the 6th grade, like them being my friends and all, but still like making racial comments about Mexicans. And like I know they're playing around, but it still touches you because that's where you're from originally. And I just, like, at one point in my life, I started like believing it was like bad to be Mexican. Like they used to say, oh, like Mexicans, all they do is drink, they cut grass, they get nowhere in life. And I just want to be like the first Mexican fashion designer, like the famous fashion designer, and prove everyone wrong. Mexicans can do it. It's just, it's not our fault that we don't get equal rights in America. And I'm trying to prove a point to everyone. I like to mix around. I have American friends, I have Spanish, I have African Americans, and in class I will stick up for whoever. When it comes to being in class, the ones that like the most comments people make on are about Mexicans or Haitians. No matter what it is, I will stand up for whoever it is because I believe everyone should be treated equal no matter where you're from. Because I was born in America and I do have like that American culture as well, but I will never choose Mexican over American or American over Mexican. I mean, I'm both and I'm not ashamed of either one of them. This is Vanessa Hernandez for Voices of Race and Change, the younger generation.
This project is made possible through the generosity of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation Fund of the Community Foundation for Palm Beach and Martin counties.
Thank you for listening to the Tortilla Diaries. I hope you enjoyed hearing the experiences of our Mexican-American familia, and I look forward to you joining our family of listeners again next month in September as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. We're excited to feature some very talented Latinx artists from the Cream Literary Alliance. We'll be interviewing poet Eduardo Condes and author Sasha Kian, and they'll also read an array of their poetry and short stories. Please make sure to listen. We're interested in knowing how you like the program. You can click on the link below to email us. We'd love to hear from you. As a reminder, if you haven't already subscribed to our program, please don't forget. And thank you for telling your friends about us. We also want to thank Dr. Kitty Oliver and the Cream Literary Alliance for their assistance, and to Kelsey Merritt from Taking Care of Business. So until next month, this is Rebecca Dominguez-Karimi saying adios y somos familia.